King Philip's War. Gilles Lepore quoted several Worcestermen talking about their fear and respect for King Philip in saying, "How we remember war can be just as important as how we waged them in the first place." When talking in proportions, King Philip's War was the most fatal war in American history, all occurring in 14 months from June 1675 to August 1676. Before we talk about King Philip, let's look at his father, Massasoit. In 1621, Massasoit was the Wampanoag sachem, or chief. When you think of the welcoming Indian chiefs that met the Pilgrims for the first Thanksgiving, Massasoit is one that was definitely depicted. During Massasoit's reign as sachem, there was peace between the Puritan settlers and the Wampanoags. Massasoit died in 1661, and King Philip's older brother, whose English name was Alexander, became sachem. Alexander was captured by Plymouth colonists near his home at Mount Hope. When he was released, he was gravely ill and never made it back. It is suggested that he died either in late 1661 or early 1662. After his brother's death, Metacomet, also known as King Philip, became sachem in 1662. In early 1675, a Christianized Indian, John Sassaman, disappeared. It is said that Sassaman told the Plymouth governor that King Philip and the Wampanoags were planning to attack the English. In King Philip's eyes, this made Sassaman a traitor, and his life was forfeit. Sassaman's murdered body was found in the spring of 1675. 3 Wampanoag warriors were apprehended, tried, and hanged on June 8, 1675. When King Philip met with colonists in attempts to compromise on June 17th, English arbitrators demanded the Wampanoags surrender their weapons and more land. The English also no longer saw Indians as sovereign nations, but as subject of the colonies that thought they were like rebellious children and felt that they should be subjected to civil law. Philip stated that English cattle spoiled Wampanoag crops, and Englishmen made Indians drunk and cheated them in bargains. Forced Christianity was seen by the Indians as a devised way to weaken tribal relations. Overall, no peace agreement was struck. Much of King Philip's war was the destruction of colonist and English Indian settlements until there was nothing left. A larger battle was the siege and eventual capture of Brookfield in August of 1675. The Battle of Bloody Brook was a great loss to the colonists. Troops went through what was then called Muddy Brook without first sending scouts or checking tree lines. The unpreparedness of the colonist cavalry led to high casualties. The Great Swamp Fight in December of 1675 was the colonists' effort to eliminate the possible enemy, the Narragansetts, who were at that time neutral in the war. It was after this battle that King Philip lost control of the war, as different tribes were following their own agendas instead of presenting a united force. Throughout this war, the Wampanoags gained many allies and enemies. The Narragansett and Nipmuc joined King Philip in his uprising, while the English had their own allies in the Pequots and Mohegans. Battles such as Nine Men's Misery, Sudbury Fight, and Turner's Fight are examples of the guerrilla warfare, proving that each side, Indian and Puritan, were alike in their mercilessness and torture of each other. This map shows the path of King Philip throughout the war. Many battles were fought by the Nipmucs and Narragansetts without Philip's knowledge. during 1676 as he was attempting to gain allies with the Mohawks, an attempt which failed. Eventually, King Philip returned near Mount Hope in August of 1676. At this time, Philip learned that his wife and child had been sold into slavery and were headed to the West Indies. As a colonist leader, Benjamin Church was hunting down Philip. Some of the Indian prisoners told him, "You have made Philip ready to die. You have made him as poor and miserable as he used to make the English. For you have now taken all his relations." But this bout almost broke his heart. As Philip ran from the colonist forces, he crossed into the path of John Alderman, a Christianized Indian, and Caleb Cook. Alderman shot him once in the heart, and again 2 inches above. Philip's body was quartered and beheaded for high treason. The quartered body was hung in 4 trees, and it is rumored that Alderman received one of Philip's hands while the other was sent back to England. They ran a spike through his head, and it was carried through the streets of Plymouth, where it stayed as a public spectacle for almost 25 years. The Puritan colonists were left wondering what they had done to cause such an uprising, and I believe the Wampanoags were clear in their phrase, "We will first take your shelter, then your beliefs, and only then will we take your lives." This is what the Puritans had essentially done to the Indians: taken their land, attempted to change their beliefs, and strip them of their culture. By the end of King Philip's War, at least 25 English towns, over half, were ruined. 1 in 10 colonists died, and the ones left lost everything they owned. King Philip's War, when thought of in proportions, is considered the most fatal war in American history, and also the most merciless, as both sides practiced torture and mutilation. King Philip's War could have made the colonists abandon New England completely. Back to Lepore's story of the Worcester men of 1831. They had prepared toasts, one being the King Philip. "Had we lived in the days of our forefathers, as an enemy, we would have slain him. But today, the present generation may safely express their respect for his patriotism."